So this man here, his name is Elton, not to be confused with the other Elton. Ha ha ha! Get it? It's so funny. It's so funny. He a funny character. He makes videos and talks about the Doctor. Do you get it? He's a fanboy. Here is the monster of the week. Absorbaloff. Absorbaloff. Oh, look how cute he is with his big fat green body. The Absorbaloff is played by British comedian Peter Kay. This is a fact about this episode. Peter Kay, an actor, a comedian. It tastes like chicken. 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 Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the one that you've all been waiting for. That's right, this is the vlog episode which, if you had any interest in this series whatsoever, is the one that you've been looking forward to. Yes, today we are going to be finally talking about that episode, the legendary episode, the episode which thought to have gone in myths and legends as one of the worst televised stories, up there with The Room and The Birdemic as some of the funniest so bad it's good content. That's right, today we're going to be talking about the Doctor Who story, Love and Monsters, written by Russell T Davies and directed by Dan Zeff. Yeah, this is the vanilla cover, which has the nude in it, so it doesn't really represent it very well. So let's just chuck that in the corner there. Now, this story has a bit of a reputation. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, we're also going to be talking about the Tardisode 10, which is written by Gareth Roberts and is directed by Ashley Way. So let's get out of the way. This story. Where do I even begin? When Russell T Davies was setting up the series for Series 2, he came up with an idea, something which he would become enormously proud of, and something which he will defend to this day as a great idea, and which would go off to make great stories later down the line. That is the concept of a Doctor Light episode. Essentially, because production was running really bulked and thick, Russell T Davies thought it'd be cheaper and save a lot of time if we filmed 2 episodes back to back. How would we get away with this? Simple. You have one story where the Doctor and his companions are hardly in it. An episode in which it revolves around a character which would have been secondary in an average episode of Doctor Who, but this is not any average Doctor Who story. Russell T Davies was so proud of this concept that he would take it down the line, and even episodes in the Stephen Moffat era would take up the Doctor Light segment of the series. So this story kicked off a trend. Whether it works well in this story or not is another question entirely. But yeah. Now, also as well, we've got to talk about the monster. The story itself was already put together, was written together. Russell T Davies already had an idea of what he wanted to do with the villain. He wanted it to be a sort of parody of Ian Levine. But that's beside the point. We mainly want to focus on the name and the design, which was actually came up by I believe it was an 8-year-old child at the time, William Gareth or something like that. I can't remember his name.
because Blue Peter actually held up a competition for Doctor Who fans to draw in a Doctor Who monster to appear in the Doctor Who episode. Second place was a football monster, which actually made its appearance in a 8th Doctor comic, if anyone's interested. But the first place, the winner of the competition, was the Absorbaloff, which is one of the most creative monster designs I have ever witnessed. It's so lacking in any originality. A big fat green guy. That's all it is. Big fat green guy with Slovene-like hands. Reportedly, the kid who created the Absorbaloff was disappointed. There's been mixed interviews on what actually happened. Some claim that the kid really enjoyed his work, the work that was on Doctor Who, and was just thrilled. But other accounts have him kind of disappointed by certain elements of the character. For example, he imagined the Absorbaloff as the size of a double-decker bus and couldn't speak. It had no vocabulary. It was just a grunting monster. So imagine his disappointment when the Absorbaloff was a normal-sized monster which could talk and had this silly character played by Peter Kay. For those of you who are actually interested in what happened to the kid who created the Absorbaloff, he became a YouTuber. Yes, Pub, I believe his name, it's either Pub Channels or Channel Pub. I'll put a link in the description below if anyone's interested. But he's actually doing pretty good for himself. He cited this moment going behind the scenes on Doctor Who, which inspired him to become an amateur filmmaker. He also makes a lot of videos about Marvel and all these other stuff. So highly recommend him if you haven't seen his channel already. But anyway, yes, the story, also the reputation of this story. This story was banned. No. That's an understatement. This story was hated by the community. In fact, it was so hated, so monumentally disgusted the people who viewed this story, that, and I'm not even kidding here, this one story nearly destroyed the revived series. That is not a joke. If it wasn't for the fact that the finale had its twist leaked out and it's something that like every fanboy wanted to see, we'll get onto them when we talk about Doomsday, An Army of Ghosts. But this story nearly killed the revived series. We could have had the Doctor Who, the revived series, with only 2 series, with David Tennant only having 1 season to his name, because he appeared in an episode, well, he hardly appeared in an episode of Doctor Who, in which, yeah. Oh, God. This story is comically known for being one of the most so bad it's good stories. But does it own that title? Does it deserve being so bad it's good? Is there some stuff to enjoy in this story? Short answer, yes, it does deserve to be so bad it's good. No, there's no real redeeming qualities about this story. And let's just talk about it. But before that, the Tardisode episode 10, the prequel episode of Love and Monsters. Nothing really much interesting to talk here. The Absorbaloff is in his room, looking on the computer, tracking down Linda, the organisation in the story. So technically this actually takes place in between, like midway through the story, unless you count the entire story as a flashback. But yeah, and we see the Absorbaloff get, at the end of it, Absorbaloff absorbing his waiter. This is probably the best looking episode of the Tardisode series. There's some really great dynamic, there's some really great composition. I like how the Absorbaloff, like you only see his hand, like he's dropped a claw from Inspector Gadget or something. And the close-up on the waitress face when she sees the Absorbaloff changing reminds me a lot of the Slovene changing in Aliens of London. The purple lights and the face and the over-exaggerated facial expressions. But yeah, it's actually a pretty decent Tardisode. That's very strange. But on to the episode itself. We start off this story seemingly on good terms, as we see this character named Elton. He's wandering around this disused something, and he finds the TARDIS and he puts his hand near the TARDIS before he hears someone crying out as he walks to where the noise, runs to where the noise is, only to be greeted by a alien monster. And that's the pre-credit sequence. Actually, the story actually interrupts beforehand, showing him making a vlog series. He's doing this. He's making a vlog series like me when I'm making a vlog about an episode of Doctor Who where the main focus, the main vocal point is a vlog. Yes. And he's basically like, whoa, that was just so crazy. And if you think that's crazy, you haven't heard the best part. As the credits roll, right off the bat, this story is irritating. The guy who plays Elton, I can't remember his name. However, I've seen him in other stuff where he is a phenomenal actor. He played Dracula at one point. He was in, I believe it was The Hogfather, the one with the mailman. And he was really good in that, a really scary performance by him. But here he's basically playing a nerd, a geek, a dork of sense of a sort. He's playing this character, Elton, not to be confused with Elton John, as the story implies. And he's basically trying to look for the Doctor. He's been on this adventure of sorts. But before we get into the story, let's talk about the visual appeal or the lack of appeal. Dan Zeff, I believe I might mispronounced his last name there. This is his only Doctor Who story that he ever directed, and it clearly shows why. The story just looks horrible from right off the bat. Actually, in the first scene, in which we have the TARDIS and the mysterious. We even have the mysterious TARDIS theme, which was, I believe, it was in Rose. Also, as well, a lot of music in this story is reused music from previous Doctor Who episodes. So, and as somebody who focuses on the music, it's so goddamn obvious. But anyway, we're talking about directing. There is just some really poorly set up shots. There's one which I think is a great idea. It's a sort of POV shot of his hand wobbling to the TARDIS. But the angle, the camera setup, the image quality seems to be juxtaposed to the rest of what the scene looks like, and it just doesn't work. it was clear from the get-go that the majority of the story is filmed on disused locations, which the production team have got cheap. And Dan doesn't do a good job at hiding them. When you look at the story, you can clearly feel like all the sets were there mainly because they were cheap, rather than story convenience or camera convenience. The story just has a really cheap quality to it. But as well, the story also does a sort of... It keeps cutting back and forth between the adventure being told and Elton basically explaining who he is, what's going on, all the mad things that have been happening to him in his vlog series. And that is mainly set like up to the way where Russell T Davies has written the story. But Dan doesn't give himself much favours. There's a lot of awkward moments in which scenes seem to be getting interesting, but then we cut to Elton in his room talking about bloody how much he bloody loves Mr. Blue Sky. You know that song. Also, that song has been notorious now for being connected with like recent sci-fi movies, most notably Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is, I believe, the first sci-fi story to use Mr. Blue Sky. I mean, it's been in films like multiple times before, but this is the first time it's been in sci-fi to specifically give that feeling of weirdness. So that is groundbreaking. In a sense, it's like, what the anyway, yeah, there's not really much to talk about Elton, apart from just how clumsy, how awkward the story's written, and how just poorly written he is. Every single thing he says is so backwards compared to the plot, and his character makes no lick of sense. I don't even know where to begin here. Let's just like do like a quick rundown and just talk about like all the terrible things that are going on. So, Elton's looking for the Doctor because he remembers the Doctor appearing in his living room, just standing there, and that has made him all mysterious about the Doctor. He didn't quite remember him. He just thought it was like this really strange man until he found a photo of him, a really recent photo. Elton then it goes on to explain how he was involved in many events that have appeared in a new series. We see him. Actually, I do like to see in events from Doctor Who stories we've already seen from the perspective of a character that we didn't get to see of. Like, for example, you see him at the Orthon invasion in Rose. We see him witnessing the destruction of Big Ben in Aliens of London. We see him with his window smashed as he looks up in the sky and sees the Sycorax ship up in the sky. The story also has a massive continuity error. The story implies here that Rose and Aliens of London are only weeks, maybe months apart, whilst in those stories there's a year separating them. That's why Jackie went so nuts in that story. So right off and it doesn't make any sense because Russell T Davies wrote all three stories. He wrote Rose, he wrote Aliens in London and World War III, and he wrote this story. What's your excuse, Russell? What's your excuse? Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent there. It's here that he meets, he gets in contact with this girl, Ursula. She is played by, I can't remember her name, but she's played by Moanin Myrtle from the Harry Potter films. Again, great actress. A lot of people, I think, unjustly criticise her performance because of her natural squeaky high-pitched voice. but I could get past that in another performance. But here, it seems like the story focuses on it, or at least when scenes with her in it. And it's also as well, she's just a poorly written character as well as every character here. As she explains that they have a team of people trying to look for the Doctor. Just a handful of people. We meet one of them is Mr. Hopper, a lecturer, teacher who joins it because he's just really fascinated by the Doctor. Bliss, a artist who makes all of these like really crap sculptures. She is the actress who plays her. I always will remember her from the sitcom 2 Pints and a Packet of Crisps. Don't ask me why. She'll always stick out in my head and that. And I think when she does just flat out comedy, she's great. But when she does something that needs a bit more dramatized, or at least the scripts that she's been given in her performances, maybe that's due to a lack of a good is there a lawyer? Employer person. But here again, she's just so annoying. Luckily though, she has very little to do. There's also this other woman who I can't remember the name of, and originally they start ganging up the group together and they talk about the Doctor, like what he means, like how the hell is all these people? How is he throughout history? Why is it that there are several people named the Doctor, but they've all got like seem to be eternal? And there's only one thing that connects all these Doctors together: the name and the TARDIS. However, they get quickly distracted in a montage which sees them starting out bringing in food, and it's like, oh wow, then they slowly start making like readings of like their books that they are planning and poetry and stuff before going into a band. So basically the whole Doctor shtick is completely forgotten from the character's point of view, and it basically tells the audience, right, these characters are unmotivated to find the Doctor. But that kind of is part of the plot, as a man breaks into their wait, are they renting it out, or do they just sneak in there because they think it's abandoned? I don't think it's ever explained. They'll be met by a guy called Victor Kennedy, someone who is desperate to find the Doctor, and he basically states it's like, right, you people are lacking in skills, you've become unmotivated, and so he basically turns it into a job as they, do desk jobs and is doing their searches for the Doctor and the TARDIS and stuff. And clearly the story's trying to represent something. It's trying to represent like how things are supposed to become fun until someone comes along and tries to take control of everything, and it becomes like a lot more like work, and the fun is getting drained out as these characters now are forced to try and find the Doctor, but the fun is gone. The band is breaking up in a sense. The idea itself, it's not so bad. It's a trope from 1,000 stories that you've heard before. But that's the thing. It's a trope that is so repeated in storytelling that you know exactly what's going on. You know exactly where this is going, and you know exactly what the thing. And the story also tries to have romance with Elton and Ursula. Like hitting it off. But the romance really just comes down to having like really awkward banter. In fact, Elton has much more of a relationship with Jackie Tyler. Yes, Jackie Tyler's in this. Now, there's one thing I do genuinely love about this story. One detail about this story, which actually makes me enjoy this, not in an ironic way, but actually enjoy this story. The inclusion of Jackie Tyler. From this point on, because she'll appear in another story after this, Jackie Tyler becomes one of my favourite characters so far in the revised series of Doctor Who. She, the woman who plays it, again, I can't remember, I'm terrible with names, but the amazing actress who plays Jackie Tyler is phenomenal, and I really like the humour in this story when it revolving around her. But again, it's at the expense of our main character, as Elton has basically been taught up how to do all of these like secret investigating, trying to find out like Rose and stuff like that is. And the story did have a genuine great moment to trying to impress us, to Elton to being a interesting character, only for Jackie to kind of like take the sails as she basically starts the conversation, starts a joke, asks him to go over her house, and starts talking about Rose as Elton is just left there just bumbling about, which makes Elton just such a stupid character. And that's the main issue with this story, is that Elton is such a weak protagonist. He hardly does anything worthy to justify his place as a main character. He just seems to be getting lucky. At one point then we again cut back into where we saw at the start of the story, in which he finds the TARDIS, he goes and finds the monster, only for the Doctor and Rose to appear and distract it, and we get the really cartoonish Scooby-Doo chase. Whoever made whoever thought there was a good idea to put a Scooby-Doo chase scene in a Doctor Who episode should be shot. Should be shot. Okay, I'm kidding, but could you imagine? Yeah, I think we're just going to have to skip to the end because otherwise I'd just be babbling on. So Victor Kennedy turns out to be the alien creature, the Absorbaloff. Peter Kay's performance is so awkward. Peter Kay is, as I've stated, a comedian actor, and he usually plays multiple characters in his own shows, where the idea, the concept of each of the shows, at least the way he performs them as an actor, is that, you know, it's sort of like outtakes, like they sort of have that awkward energy about it. But here it's kind of be like his first time, like, genuinely as an actor. But he keeps that energy with him, and it does not blend. But the Absorbaloff, just everything about this monster, anything that could go wrong, went wrong. He is such a cliche in terms of the way he's written, the way he, oh, pity me, oh, don't you want to hurt an innocent creature? And then he sucks up Ursula Liebenoldi Elton as the surviving member of Linda, the TARDIS, the team trying to chase down the Doctor, called Linda, which is something which surprisingly gets referenced a lot. Speaking of references, that's what I need to talk about. This is the only story in the Russell T Davies era that references not one, not two, not three, but all 4 seasons story arcs. We hear the Bad Wolf virus is the thing that deletes information about the Doctor and Rose. We see the TARDIS, not the TARDIS, Torchwood archives being mentioned. Something about Vote Saxon, which is something that gets linked into the next season, Series 3. And Clom, the planet of the Absorbaloff, is one of the missing planets that will be, and what happens to that planet gets resolved in Journey's End. So, yeah, this story is surprisingly important if you're interested in your references to story arcs. Well, sort of. You know what I mean. And we also have like this really, really funny chase scene, which is clearly just the footage kind of sped up when it cuts to Peter Kay chasing around the streets and some of the dialogue he gets, she tastes like chicken, it's just so, like, again, it's supposed to be funny, it's supposed to be, but I believe the way that it's funny as it's presented to us, it's funny in an ironic sense, not funny as in an intentional sense, if that makes any sense. Only for then, just before the Absorbloff is about to absorb Elton, the TARDIS appears. This is another example of just how terrible a main character Elton is. He does not do anything worthwhile. He does not take any sort of action, really, apart from when he storms out of Victor Kennedy's room at one point, which kind of feels really weak and half-arsed. And when it's time for him to finally step up and finally save the day, it's like, right, it's time for my experiences, the story, the lessons I've learned in this venture to pay off. The Doctor arrives and just solves the day for him, in a sense, as the Doctor basically convinces all of the people that the Absorbloff has absorbed to pull him, which gives him a lot of pain, which allows Elton to smash his staff, which some reason melts him into the earth. And that's essentially the end of our story. Yes, that's the end of the story. No, I do not want to talk about that. You want me to talk about it, don't you? You really, really want me to talk about it, don't you? Fine then. For your enjoyment, for your viewing pleasure, I will talk about the ending of this story. The Doctor manages to resurrect Ursula, but not in her normal human form. No. As a face on a slab. And she has no mobility apart from when Elton moves her around. So basically he's got to keep her prisoner. He's got to keep her locked away from the rest of the world. How does she eat? We have no idea. And the story also implies that Elton gets blowjobs from this thing, as he mentions that they have a bit of a sex life or love life. A family show. A Doctor Who story, which ends with our character that we've been spending the entire episode with not save the day, not only just not saving the day, but gets blowjobs from a head on a slab, which is technical. Like, what happens when they break up? What happens when Elton gets old because she mentioned she doesn't age? Is she immortal now? What happens if Elton goes to... How does she get out? Does she go out? Is she stuck in Elton's house forever? What happens if somebody else came and saw her? Just... What the hell is this story done to me? Just call this story Doctor Who and the Blowjob Slab. We also get a nice little twist at the end of the story. It turns out the reason the Doctor was at Elton's house all those years ago is because he was fighting a shadow, an elemental shade as he calls it. a shade that happened to have killed Elton's mother. Something which he seems to only remember now that the Doctor brings it up. Something which could have been an entirely important aspect of Elton's character, something which could be one of the grounding motivations of his character. Turns out to be a small twist at the end of the story, which is a twist to him because he forgot that the Doctor was there when his mother died. Like he saw his mother die, his mother dead body, whilst the Doctor was in the room. How he didn't expect the Doctor was the bloody murderer, I have no clue. And he remembers the Doctor being there, but not his dead mother. Love and Monsters clearly has the worst ending of every single Doctor Who story that we have tackled so far. We're nearly like 300 of these. And this takes the cake. Forgets his mother's death but remembers the Doctor, a stranger. But also he gets blowjobs from Stone, and also he doesn't save the day. He doesn't do anything apart from break a cane. Russell T Davies, you're definitely not watching this. But if on the slight chance, just the slightest, that you're watching this, explain how you wrote this. What made you think this was a good idea? Sorry. My head was kind of exploded. So there you go, that's Love and Monsters in Tardisode 10. Does it deserve its hate? Probably. I mean, not really. There's people who generally hate this story. I mean, the story is terribly written, it's terribly acted, it's terribly paced, just terribly shot, just all around the board. However, the story is so perfectly bad, all the worst bits just fit into pieces, that I genuinely think, and I'm not even joking here, I genuinely think it's a masterpiece. And, you know, there's clearly more worse Doctor Who stories out there. I mean, probably better written, better pacing, better everything, but they're not as entertaining as Love and Monsters. Think about it. Despite Love and Monsters being an absolutely terrible story, you'll be remembering this for the next 10, 20 years. Stories like Hellbent, you'll probably forget by after you're watching it. So there you go, that's Love and Monsters. I hope you enjoyed this vlog series. This is the one that I know a lot of people have been looking forward to. This story has a massive reputation, so I hope this video pays off the appeal of this story, and I hope you enjoyed. So join me next time when the Doctor and Rose arrive to the distant future of 2012, as the Doctor and Rose unravel a conspiracy of missing children on a small road during the Olympics for some reason. So join me next time for Fear Her, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!